This year, we're going to have a 50% turnover in family court judges at the end of this race. So we've got to know who our judges are and don't vote blindly. Find somebody you trust.
Right.
Brittany here with a Perspectives video on high conflict child custody. Donna Wilburn, a licensed marriage and family therapist with Red Rock Counseling, is going to be interviewing hearing master Margaret Pickard, who is running for Department V of the 8th Judicial District Court.
Alrighty, so thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So I'm Donna Wilburn, and I'm a marriage and family therapist in town, and I associate with our Nevada judges who really are good about informing the public about judges, candidates, court, things like that. So as a therapist, I do come across some judge candidates, some judges out there, but even when I'm looking at the ballot and I'm like, I have no idea who to vote for, right? So I was thinking I should get to know these people. And it turns out other voters want to get to know the candidates too.
Good thing.
So we're filming them and then we're going to put them on YouTube so people can really get to know their candidate, really kind of get to know how they think and feel and what they're bringing to the bench so you can make an informed choice versus blindly voting for just whoever. I think that's totally irresponsible.
Right. So I'm really glad that you're doing this.
Thank you. So first, I don't know what position you're running, what role, whatever that is, department or whatever, and maybe a little bit about how you got to this point where you're running for judge now.
Okay, well, my name is Margaret Pickard, and I'm running for family court in Department V. A lot of people think it's Department 5 because it's a Roman numeral, but it's not. It's actual letters. So letters are used for family court and numbers are used for civil criminal court.
Okay.
So that's a huge difference. It'll be at the bottom of the ballot. I'm running actually, interestingly, for my current job. So in other words, I currently work as a hearing master by appointment. I went through an extensive vetting process and was chosen to oversee this case type right now, abuse and neglect of children. My specialty for years prior to that was high conflict custody. I've always been child focused. And so I oversee courtroom 14 in the current, in the courthouse and family court. But what happened was the legislature decided that all abuse and neglect cases would hereafter be decided by elected officials rather than appointed. So we had 3 elected and 3 appointed. So the appointments are turning into elected positions.
But you're still going to work with the abuse and neglect cases?
That's my goal. Well, that's my goal. But it's really random because you don't know. Of the new 6 seats that are being set up for family court, 3 are abuse and neglect and 3 are family.
Okay.
Domestics, which we call them. So they're all part of family court. Family court has 7 different areas. But so actually what'll happen is you'll either be assigned to a domestic calendar, which I'm very familiar with. That's what I did, high conflict custody, or I'll be assigned to a dependency calendar. So either one, I'm excited about because that's what I've been doing, and I really have enjoyed working with the court system. Well, you can make a difference. There you go. You can make a difference. And so it's a calendar that I've overseen for several years. In addition, I worked juvenile justice prior to that. And from 2003 to 2015, I taught at UNLV and I taught family law and other classes. But I also developed a class called cooperative parenting that you're familiar with. And that was for high conflict parents, custody cases.
So why don't you say, what is high conflict?
So high conflict,
those out there that have no idea.
Okay, so that's a good question because high conflict is frequent flyers, people that we see in the court system a lot. And they're fighting a lot, usually over their kids, custody issues. So we really try to give them tools to work more effectively with each other. And sometimes those tools are how to email your co-parent about an issue rather than getting into a brawl in front of the kids in an exchange. So I developed that program because we have such a huge problem in our family court with parents thinking the judge is going to be able to solve all of the problems. And unfortunately, you only see the judge maybe once or twice a year.
Right.
And really you need the coping skills. And so we started that program. Over 1,500 family court litigants, parents were sent to that program. And really my passion throughout my entire family law practice is protecting the kids, making sure that the parents, even if they don't have kids, or the individuals, the litigants, are able to get a just result in the court system.
How do you recognize when a case is coming in front of you, if it's high conflict or just regular divorce, and how would you make adjustments to that as the judge?
So I will give you an example, because when my practice so far as a hearing master is I've overseen juvenile delinquency cases, and then I've seen abuse and neglect cases. And then prior to that, I worked as a parent coordinator over the child custody, high conflict cases. But let me give you a really good example. I was in my courtroom. I had a kiddo who came in on drug charges. And it was really interesting because in the back of the courtroom, the parents clearly in the first 30 seconds, you can tell, despised each other. Oh. They came in there, you could just feel the tension. They sat as far away as they could get from each other. They were just somewhat disdainful. So when we were going through the process, it was a sentencing hearing, as we were going through the process and the parents wanted to speak, it was clear they didn't get along. You know, mom stood up, it's all dad's fault, dad's such a bad dad, and there are no filters, no ability of the parents to understand when you just bash really half of that child, because the child's psyche is made up of those two individuals, their parents. It really is hard on that kiddo. And you could just watch the countenance of the child just crumble as they sat there at the defendant's table. And it was clear the parents were in conflict. And I commented on that. And I said, until you figure out your issues, your poor kiddo is in the middle of your battle. And it's no wonder that your child has drug issues, because they don't know how to cope with a parent's conflict.
Do they have research about that? Because this is a bigger kid, and a lot of kids out there are 5, 6, 7 years old, and parents think they're doing fine. So here comes in this child, probably a teenager. So someone would say, like, how is he even affected? He's a teenager. Why does he even care?
That's a really good question, because no matter when you are separated or divorced, it's the conflict. It's not the separation or divorce. People focus too much on that as the problem.
Right.
That's not it. It's the conflict. So even if you're still in an intact family couple, if there's constant fighting and conflict and, God forbid, domestic violence, that child is negatively impacted by that. It starts very young. As soon as that child is born, and there's conflict. And sometimes conflict can be absolute silence at a custody exchange.
Right.
They refuse to talk to each other. I used to do when I was did parenting coordination, I did a lot of parent exchanges. Over the years, I've seen so many parent exchanges. And I'll give you an example of I had one when I was practicing in Montana, and the kids came in and they said to their mom, I don't want to leave you, I hate dad, I don't want to go. And then as soon as mom left, and then 10 minutes later dad walks in, their kids are like, oh daddy, I'm so excited to see you, I can't wait.
And the mom's thinking they're devastated.
Right, because those kids are trying to take care of mom's psyche. They're trying to take care of her and make sure that she's okay. They don't want to express that they do really like dad. Typical example is that. I've seen exchanges where I did one exchange in my office where mom and dad were passing, and dad flips mom off at the side as soon as the child passes, and it was so clear, the disdain. So those are the cases. I'm really worried about the kids. And one of the issues in Nevada is we've really worked hard to create the legal presumption that it is in the best interest of the children to have contact with both parents. And what does that look like, especially if you have a parent who's alienating or we like to say interfering with custody of the other parent's time. It's not healthy for kids to hate a parent. Even in the worst case scenario, the worst abuse cases, a lot of those kids still want some contact, which should be appropriate, supervised, etc. But it's not healthy.
Healthy contact.
Right, healthy
and safe contact.
Healthy and safe. It's not really, it's completely inappropriate for a child's development to completely hate and cut off one parent. That is not healthy. As much as one parent wants to justify it, that they're a bad parent, they hurt them, they've done this, it's not very healthy. It's not healthy. And so I really worry about those families. And so
you and me both.
So
I understand it. So I'm curious, because it seems like you have quite a knowledge about the children's psyche, how it affects the kids, long-term, short-term. Is this something you just got this knowledge because of seeing so many cases, or do you go to classes, or did you have how did you get all this information?
So my background is sociology. People don't understand the difference between psychology and sociology. So for sociology, the focus is the impact of the group. How does one influence the other? So my study's always been family dynamics. Okay. And it's never been more clear. I mean, originally I did sociology because I wanted to understand how to pick a jury, how jurors, interpret information they're receiving.
You want to know about the people.
Right, but during that process, I realized we have this huge hole in the court system where we need to get judges to understand family dynamics, understand what's going on, and there are some really clear red flags. And so I've done I don't even, I was going to count on my resume. I think I've done 75 different trainings on high conflict custody cases.
Really?
I've taken multiple trainings, hundreds of trainings on anything related to family dynamics, high conflict custody. So I'm really big on educating. And I work with judges and attorneys throughout Nevada, educating them at our family law conferences about what they can do, how they can change, because a judge who understands it and intervenes properly is sometimes the only person who's ever going to break the cycle.
That makes a lot of sense. So I'm curious, here you are with so much knowledge and experience in this high conflict case. What would make you a good candidate as a judge? Why is that important to have that? So let's say as you have cases come across in front of you, how are you using that to benefit the case versus another judge who doesn't have that, who's also making decisions about the case?
Well, so right now I'm working in child abuse and neglect, and a lot of parents who are going through a divorce on the divorce side of the house, or a separation, because more people actually go through separations than they do a legal divorce. They've never been married, but they've had a child in common. So when you come into that, it's not uncommon for parents who are trying to interfere with the other parent's custody to make false allegations. They're hurting the child. They're doing this to the child, and so those are investigated. But on both sides of the house, so to speak, the family court, you need to understand that dynamic, because otherwise you have a separation or divorce case coming in, the parents are fighting about custody. And if you don't understand some of the red flags when one parent's trying to interfere with the other parent's custody, it's very concerning, the decisions that might be made. So we're trying to make sure we have healthy relationships where both parents remain involved with the child during their lifetime. And sometimes that, that can look like sometimes every other week. That can look like 3-4, which is 3 days a week and 4 days a week with the other parents, switching off. Weekends, it's really, because we live in a 24-hour community, so it's really based on the parents' schedules, and there's got to be a lot of tailoring. This is not a cookie cutter city. We have to personalize.
Let me ask someone who doesn't have that knowledge and experience about high conflict, how it affects kids and all that. How does their decision affect the family different than your decision affects the family?
Well, I think that there's a huge difference. And so number one is 80% of court time is taken up with the 20% of high conflict cases.
Okay.
So these are people that are coming back in fighting about everything. If you don't understand that dynamic and what's underlying it and how to address it, it makes it very difficult for you to ever get compliance, because one parent who is interfering with the other parent's parenting time, you gotta help them understand. If you take away, let's say, in a sexist manner, I'm gonna say this for a minute, because both moms and dads interfere with the other parent's custody time. But let's say that you have dad interfering with mom's custody time. Dad, the consequence for that is we're going to give you, mom, 2 days for every day you've taken away from her. Maybe you assess attorney's fees. There's a lot of things to do, but the reality is that we expect people who are sharing the kids to support the child's relationship with the other parent. You may not like the other parent, but I certainly hope the stable parent, whoever the stable parent is, because there's hopefully only need one stable parent at least, they're going to be supportive of that child's relationship with the other parent. And you don't have to lie and go, oh, they're amazing. But certainly don't cut them down for everything they do. Say one nice thing. So when I ran the cooperative parenting program, I would say, pick the simplest thing you can. For example, your mom likes mustard on her hot dogs too. I do too. Maybe that's one thing. Maybe that's the only thing you think you have in common. But it counts. Instead of going, oh, that's stupid. Why would you ever put mustard on your hot dog? And it's really, I've interviewed so many children in these situations for the court when I've been appointed to do the child interviews. And it's interesting that how the kids are trying to work out the dichotomy in their head. I had one kiddo who reported that at dad's house, he could stay up as late as he wanted, play video games all night long. But he was really smart because he justified it and said, but at mom's house, there's a lot of structure and I have to go to bed at 8, so it's good. I catch up on my sleep. But if you're asking the kid, which parent they want to live with, which you should never ask a kid directly, but a lot of, unfortunately, people do, they're going to pick the house with no structure, no requirements. That's bad for a child's development. And yet we discount the parent who has some more structure. And so in the family courts, not just here, but everywhere across the country, sometimes we're enabling bad behavior. There's a UC Davis Law Review article about that. So there's ways to figure out, right? So I did a whole training for the judges and the family court attorneys on how you figure out which home is better without asking the child. There's a lot of ways and mechanisms, and so we really need to understand that dynamic. I'm huge on it. I mean, I'm passionate about it, obviously, but
Right.
huge about
And
knowledge.
I know you've had many, many years on this particular subject,
Mm-hmm.
subject, and really focusing on this kind of divorce dynamic. And I'm sure like lots of other types of cases, but the fact that you even have an awareness and a focus and even know what you're talking about in this type of case is unique.
Well, it's
unique.
vital. It's vital, and that's not to say that I can't do a high property settlement distribution, because I certainly can do those as well. Complex property distributions, I can do those as well. But my focus has been really working on that dynamic in custody, because most of our cases that come back to court are custody based,
Right.
not property based. Property is pretty simple to figure
Right.
out. It's a calculation. You can figure out how to distribute property, maybe do a forensic evaluation of each party's assets. But ultimately, these custody cases are what are clogging our court systems up.
So let me ask, so I'm a therapist. I obviously work with and talk to a lot of my peers, and some are intimidated by the court system, but some want to help. How would you incorporate the use of a therapist, or how can we benefit you guys in the courtroom?
There's a lot of ways, especially in these custody cases where there's a lot of conflict. It's working with the child. And this is what I will say about the therapist, that I absolutely love therapists who work with both parents when they're helping a child.
Right.
It's not healthy for a therapist to work with, and a lot of experts, I mean, a lot of people who don't do this don't know that. They think, a lot of parents, experts will say, well, I'm an expert, and they work with the child and the one parent who's telling them their side of the story. But the therapist needs to hear both sides and then kind of figure out, for the child's sake, understanding the dynamic of that. So therapists help a lot of ways. They help with reunification therapy if there's been a long time where a child's not seeing one parent because they've been blocked.
Right.
They help with just counseling the child, because children involved in high conflict custody, constant battle between their parents, don't always understand how to figure out who's lying and who's not.
Right.
They know somebody's lying, but it impacts their development. Of course, really individual therapy, family therapy. There's a lot of things that therapists can do. The initial evaluation to help the judge figure out what's going on.
Right. Just
That's
sharing that
important too.
info seems like it would be helpful.
Right. You know, and those types of issues are really important for a therapist to be involved in it. Now, we always have to understand the expense factor and figure some of those issues out, but we need to have that bridge. And I'm proud that I've been the one in my legal career who's bridged that gap and said, you can't just function as a family court without bringing that mental health part into it.
I know there's and you know, I've seen your work over the years, that I know there's a very strong focus on educating, bringing the awareness, helping find solutions. So if you do get elected to this position, is that something that you're going to continue doing?
Well, absolutely. And so there's certain roles you can play once you're judicial. So, you know, if you have that judicial role, and right now I'm a hearing master, so I have to be very careful. But one of the things is vital, and this is one of my friends in California is working with the court system, and they actually have a parenting and a co-parenting class within the court system.
Okay.
So that people can
Run by the court system.
run by the court system.
Okay.
As part of the court system. And instead of just saying, well, just go pay somebody else to do this, why aren't we doing a lot of education within the court system?
Right.
And we do have cooperative parenting. We have the COPE class, we have the cooperative parenting, which is the higher level and 8-week class. But I think really educating and helping people better understand the dynamic. Because again, when I taught the cooperative parenting class, I would say, if I can't get 2 healthy parents, I'd like to just get 1 at least. Because 1 healthy parent can bridge that gap for the kids. And so understanding that.
Right.
Also understanding that having the kids share holidays in a healthy way is a very good thing. And you know, typical example I'm sure you've seen is parents, you know, it's Christmas Day, one parent's going to get the morning, one parent's going to get the afternoon, which I hate those times if there's high conflict. But they do the exchange. So the parent coming to pick the kiddo up in the afternoon says, you can't take your new toys. And by the way, leave everything that you have and the entire family you're with right now and come and be part of this other group. It's not healthy for kids, so there's healthier
You just got
ways.
that.
Right.
They're all excited. That's a really good way to make them feel bad.
So exchanging holidays with larger blocks is much
Right.
healthier for kids.
Okay.
So those kinds of things are really vital for understanding and parenting and holiday schedules. And so I've been a big proponent of healthy dynamics. And if your judicial officer doesn't understand that, they split major holidays they create conflict.
Oh.
And they don't always understand. It's really hard for a kiddo.
So
to be broken up
that
in
was
the
an
middle.
interesting little point, is that if a judge is not aware and not educated, some of their decisions can actually cause the conflict.
Oh, absolutely. And another example is if you have, these are for high conflict cases. So in a typical case, a healthy relationship, maybe parents can exchange kiddos on a Sunday night. But if you have an unhealthy relationship, it's much healthier for one parent to drive the kiddo to school on Monday. The other parent's custody time then starts then, and then they interact with the child, pick the child up from school. Now the child doesn't witness that constant battling. But if you don't, I wrote an article for the judges years ago saying, don't exchange at one parent's house when you have parents at war. All the kiddo's gonna see every week is, I'm going from this parent's house, it's not safe to go to the other parent's house because the parent is vilifying. And so that's hard for a child. Nowhere safe.
It's also a trigger, like children anticipate. So as soon as that's happening and they know their parents are going to be around each other, if there's history of conflict, that child's getting stressed out and nervous already. I can't tell you how many children have said to me, they do not want their parent even in the same room at all. They don't want their parents together because it causes them so much anticipatory anxiety just thinking that they might have conflict.
Yeah.
So like spare the child. So if someone wants to learn more about you or get to know or contact you and ask you questions, how would they go about doing that?
So you can find my website, pickard4judge.com. Has my background information about me, my endorsements. In addition, find me at Pickard4Judge at Family Court Twitter or Facebook, because on Facebook, all those media, but Facebook, I do a Tuesday Talks with Margaret every Tuesday. You were on this last week. And we talk about issues that are relevant to the family court and what people need to be aware of. So you can find a lot of information about my qualifications and my candidacy on my social media at Pickard4Judge.
Okay. Pickard4Judge.
Pickard.
All right.
It's not Picard.
Not like from Star Trek or
Star
something.
Trek,
No.
yeah.
Okay.
So please, I welcome everybody. Contact me through my website, or just look on and find out. And please be informed about your judges,
Yes,
because this year we're going to have a 50% turnover in family court judges at the end of this race. So we've got to know who our judges are, and don't vote blindly. Find somebody you trust.
Right. Their decisions affect the kids. They affect the children. So we need to have really good candidates in there because their decisions can affect a child's whole life.
So make sure that your whoever you're voting for at least had a family court case before, because there are some people who've never done domestics who are running, and so it's just important that you look at the background and the experience, because we have some fantastic candidates running.
Yeah, I've seen. So thank you so much. Thank you for coming in and talking to me. I appreciate it so much. People are really going to learn a lot by listening to this. So thank you.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much. Margaret Pickard, Family Court Department B.
Thanks.
Thanks, Donna.